sounds good.
So the first question that they asked me was, do you drink caffeine before racing? And if you don't, what do you do to activate yourself?
So I do take a little bit of caffeine before my races. They have these little packets called goos, and that usually runs about anywhere from 0 to 50 milligrams of caffeine. I make sure all the ones that I have are always caffeinated. So I'll have one of those. That's pretty much the only caffeine that I have before my race, but I'll also mix it into my drink of, it's called Vitargo. It's a carbohydrate drink that I'll have before my races just to like fuel up, you know, get some easy fuel in, water-based, you know. And so, I mean, I'll have the goos, I'll put them in my feeds as well throughout the race. So I'll get a steady little batch of caffeine throughout the race. I mean, I believe what's supposed to be effective is 200 milligrams, and I'm nowhere near that number. If anything, it's just a little mental placebo. It just gets my eyes a little bit widened, and I'm like ready to go, you know, and I'm shaking a little bit. But yeah, I do use some caffeine, but the only time I ever use it is at open water races. I don't.
Oh, you don't use it for pool?
No.
What do you do to activate yourself in the pool? Just
pool, I just
warm up?
drink Vitargo. And I do warm up. I usually almost never do dynamic warm up on my own. I'm not a really big fan of that. I figure that the warm up you should be doing is in the pool, because I mean, like, you'll see people doing jumping jacks and jump rope. And back on Sandpipers, we used to do dynamic warm up before every meet, which I think was effective for a good amount of people. But I like feeling nice and fresh when I hop in the water, you know, and just working my way into it in the pool rather than on the deck. I just I'm fond of the idea of doing it all in the pool if I'm gonna go race in the pool.
Definitely. Well, the second question that I have is, what's your favorite set?
So my favorite set is one that I did last year here. It's gonna take a minute to explain. So it was.
So we assume an average of 25K. The first part is.
It actually wasn't that big. It was a pretty big set. The set itself was 10.8, I believe, and it was comprised of 5 ones freestyle. I believe I did like a progression where I would cut down the yardage each time as I do it. I was doing like a weekly thing. So this was the biggest portion of it, the biggest version of it, which was the first time I did it. So it was like 5 ones. I kept it on a slower interval. I believe it was 115 freestyle.
Wait, is that short course or long?
Short course yards.
Short course yards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was 5 ones freestyle on 115, and it was just steady, just keeping it moving, you know, staying nice and loose. And then 2 500s on 530 freestyle, and then 4 100s IM on 120, I believe it was. Same thing, nice and smooth. And then 2 400 IMs, and those were, I believe, in 5 minutes. So nice and comfy on the intervals. A lot of room to breathe. But the deal was, I was descending the 500s. And so there were 4 rounds of that entire thing that I just explained. So you had the 5 ones, 2 5s, 4 ones, 2 4s. Do that 4 times through. And so you're descending the 500s 1 to 8. You're descending the 400 IMs 1 to 8. And you kind of use the 100s in between as like a little rest and get ready periods. And I mean, it was probably the most fun I've had doing a set by myself. Just because I like descending because it keeps you engaged. You're always looking at the clock, and time just flies by when you're doing that kind of stuff. I'm not very fond of swimming alone, but when I do, I like to do descending stuff like that. And it was really enjoyable. Had a lot of room to breathe, so I started off real nice and smooth. But by the end, I think last ones, I think I was like 445 and then 440 on the 500s, and then like 408 and then 403 on the 400 IMs, which was probably like one of the best ends to a set I've ever had. And just after all that yardage, being able to produce a solid body of work there at the end, and to go fast. I like long stuff where you're able to go fast in it. I mean, I'll do the 10K for times, just go as hard as I can the whole time. But I find it to be more interesting to have like a crescendo into the end, and where you just really hit it and do something really powerful at the end. Because I believe it's both important to get the yardage in, but also to replicate your races and get some paces that you would like to see within your races and
That's great.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is going to be another long question too. What's the hardest set you have done?
So hardest set I've done actually wasn't incredibly long, but it was during the training cycle that I was doing for Fort Myers last year, when I was averaging that 10.5. I was doing, the set was a 500 freestyle in 5 minutes, and then 10 50s all out on a minute, and do that 4 times through. So it doesn't like sound incredibly hard, but like you build up the lactate from like doing all those 50s fast, and then you have to hit that 500 at like a good pace, and it's right from that 500 you go right into the first 50 fast, and the minute base starts to feel shorter and shorter and shorter as you go on, and I just kept on building up more and more lactate, and I remember vividly at the end of the set when I finished. It was a good set. I mean, I was like probably averaged about 25s on the 50s freestyle, which is pretty decent for me. Like, I mean, my 50 is a 23, and that was also in practice. But yeah, I mean, it just got way harder as it went on, and I mean, I was able to hold pretty well in the 500s and go pretty fast on the 50s. But at the end of the set, I like finished the last one, and like my teeth were like chattering.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, because like I don't know, I had emptied it all. Like that was probably the first set, maybe like ever, where I had found that I'd like emptied every tank that I had. Like, and it just like I was like shaking,
Yeah.
and like I didn't know what was going on, because I'd never had like that sort of balance of going for a long time and then going really, really fast again and again and again and again, and then you go back into the long stuff and you go fast and again and again. And just, I think it was the contrast that made me really tired. Really unexpected set. Like, you'd think, at least I would think that I'd be able to handle that like pretty decently, but I was hurting by the end, and I remember Bob was like freaking out.
Oh, I was about to say that. Was it Bob's set or like Logan's set?
Logan's set. So originally what had happened with that training cycle was like I had originally asked for 8.5K average, so like similar to what I had done for Abu Dhabi, but Bob doesn't particularly like it when I ask for more, so I'm pretty sure the coaches like agreed that I was gonna do 10.5s, and like Bob was just like, all right, like he wants more, give him more. And they gave me more, man, and I was a pretty happy camper, but also quite confused. I was like, I asked for 8.5, and I'm getting like quite a bit more than that, But I mean, I wasn't gonna really ask any questions. Like, I'll take the more yardage, man. It's just gonna make me more fit. But yeah, and then so Logan was crafting these hefty practices up for me. Just, oh my gosh, I've never done anything like a training cycle like that. It was hell. But I remember after the set, like Bob saw the state I was in, and like that I was having like a little freak out moment. And as soon as I like leave the wall for warm down, Bob like turns to Logan. He's like, "You need to make sure that he is okay and that he never does that again." I think he was probably pretty scared. I think Logan was too, because it was like almost like shock. That's what it felt like. Like it felt like my adrenaline was super high. And like I was just like wired, and that's like might have been why my teeth were chattering, but I think it might have put Bob on edge a little bit. I think that might have scared
No,
him.
yeah, well, I might get scared too. You were like.
No, yeah, it was funny though. I'm not really sure what happened with that training block, but from what I like inferred is that Bob had his hand and give me the extra there, and
So
And he was
people
like,
should not try that set.
I mean, you can, you definitely can.
Make
if you
sure
want
you
your
have
teeth to be
people
chattered,
around there to
no,
watch you.
Yeah, make sure there's some lifeguards or something. But yeah, that was probably the toughest one, at least that I can remember.
And was it all without resting? Like,
Oh yeah, it was
instead of
just straight through.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, yeah, because that was probably the toughest part was going straight from that fast 50 into the relatively fast 500. You know, 5 minutes is not an easy pace. And then going right from that 5 minutes, I mean, I'm getting maybe 5 seconds of rest because you know I'm trying to conserve as much as I can and still get a breath, you know, before I go. But just the balance that I had to create during that was something that I found to be very challenging and very taxing. So.
And so the 50s were from push.
Yeah, everything was from a push. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a good challenge.
Yeah.
The last question that I have from the fans is, what does your taper look like for an international event?
So international meaning open water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so.
So honestly, I don't really taper at all for open water for the most part. I mean, I'll usually, until I travel, I'll run really high numbers, as high as I can
do you
get.
keep the intensity high, or do you decrease the intensity and keep like the volume high?
Typically, it's I tend to drop the volume a little bit when I get to like the place where the venue is, like the country. So I'll drop the volume. For instance, like when I was at Israel, I like was doing those 8s and then the 15s on the weekends, and then I got there and I probably dropped it to like I think I probably did like a 7, a 6, and a 6 or something like that. I don't remember how many practices there were there, but that's typically my thought process going is I don't want to drop it too low. I want to keep the tension on my stroke.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm feeling strong. Because I mean, you can taper if you want for open water, but like taper only lasts so long. You know, after the first 1500, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and you're left to fight a weak battle because you're so low in the yardage department. At least that's what I believe. There are plenty schools of thought in that regard, but I like to feel strong, and so I keep the yardage up, and the intensity does come up when I get there. Typically, it'll just be like it'll be some smooth swimming. A good portion of it probably will be warm up and like kick and pull and stuff, and then we might have a little bit of fast activation stuff. But it's never anything too drastic, never anything too big when I get there. It's kind of just going through the motions and keeping myself strong. So I wouldn't call it taper, maybe just like rest. But I guess taper for open water.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, don't like to bring it too low. I like to keep the confidence high. And that's the way I like to keep my confidence up, is by keeping the yardage up as well.
Perfect. Sense. Yeah, I think that answers the question. Ronnie?
My turn. So, my first question is, what's your gym workout like? Do you do like a lot of power? Is it more like resistance training for your type of events?
So Coach Jake, our strength coach, has a really good program built for pretty much all swimmers. I mean, we do have separation between the sprinters and everybody else. So the sprinters have their own thing. Of course, they focus on lifting quite a bit more because the strength factor is such a huge portion of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it's we try to get movements that translate into swimming. So we'll do our Olympic lifts, our cleans, our snatches. I can't do those right now because of this guy. But I mean, we do a lot of Olympic lifts. We'll do our squats, just translating, because I mean, walls are, for the most part, equally as important for everybody's race.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I mean, you have the same amount of walls in every race, in terms of like ratio. You know, 'cause, I mean, the walls you might not be doing 7 underwaters off every wall in the mile, but you'll have 66 of them. You know, and so that explosive phase and being able to get off the ground and light it up, and being able to jump, and we do a lot of jumping stuff. That's really important as well. But we do have strength exercises as well. We'll do our bench presses, and like I said, we'll do our squats. We do a lot of stuff with cables, so we'll do rowing with the cables, and like shoulder presses and stuff like that. We work the whole body, and we do a pretty good combination of like exercises that directly translate
Mm-hmm.
to swimming, and those that help the strength factor. Because being strong, like developing the strength as you develop in the water is a really, really good thing. So if you can find a balance there to where you're not too strong and you feel like you're sinking and you're just getting too strong for your own good and you're just muscling your way through the water, if you can find that balance where you're steadily increasing your strength and increasing your swimming rate, then that's like it's golden for improvement. So that's a very delicate balance that Coach Jake has found, and I think clearly he has a huge part to play in our team, and as the results have shown, what he has been doing is working. So just balance, I'd say, is the main word that is behind our strength workouts in the gym.
Okay, nice. Touching on taper a little bit deeper, do you taper for every competition? For example, like starting December 2021, you had Abu Dhabi, then February PAC 12, then March NCAs, then on summer Budapest, and then so like having so many competitions every 3-4 months, do you taper for all of them or just decide one or two?
So for open water, like I said, I pretty much do the same thing every time for open water. I found that it's something that's really worked for me, and I don't think tapering for any one meet for like open water would necessarily benefit you more than the other. I am very stubborn in the idea that, at least for myself, that I don't need a taper for open water.
Okay.
Because, like I said, it tends to disappear. Like taper even for milers looks way different than taper for 50s, and I'd say for the 10K it should look even different, more so. So I don't really come down for those meets, but I do work it into where like at PAX. So like, for instance, I was like the day before I raced the 500, I only did a 2K. You know, and that was the hardest thing for me ever to do, just because like I had so much energy that I was bouncing off the walls and like this better work, dude. I'm gonna be so mad if I didn't if I negated that 10K that I could have done at the pool yesterday. That kind of stuff drives me nuts. I don't know. I find a lot of confidence in yardage and stuff, but I do taper. I taper almost exclusively just for PAX.
Okay.
That's like the only meet you'll find me tapered for. Like for this meet, for instance, that we just had U of A. I was like, the last 3 practices were like 6, 7, 8, and then I was 9s, you know. I like to have that little switch, the taper switch, just like one time.
Okay.
And I usually save that for PAX because that's, as of late, that's been my big meet in the pool. And like I said, I mean, I feel like that I only need to get a taper in the pool, not so much in open water.
Okay. This is kind of a big question. We can divide it into 3. If you can share us some tips on what you do behind the scenes. When I say behind the scenes, it's like other than training or gym. Like how do you take care? Like what's your go-to ritual, if you want to say it, or go-to thing you do to prevent injury, to recover from training day to day? Maybe, I don't know, flexibility or eating more, sleeping more. So what's if you had to choose like one tip for recovery, injury prevention, and extra stuff you do at home, what would it be? What you could share with us?
I'd say the main thing, pretty much the only thing that I do, is I eat a lot. I always eat. Like I always say it's better to have too much fuel than to have not enough of it.
Okay.
Because if you're operating constantly in a caloric deficit, you're not going to get better. You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to get faster. So having too much and having a little bit of belly fat on top isn't such a bad thing because it allows you to get stronger. And I've always been a guy who eats a lot, and I think it ties into my performance in practice and my performance in meets, and the fact that I'm tend to be constantly improving. Of course, there's lulls in the improvement, but I've found that for the most part I'm typically on an upper trajectory, and I think a huge portion of that is to be paid in my eating habits and also my hydration as well. I always make sure that I'm sipping on water the whole day because that keeps the body moving. You don't have, you don't put oil in the car, it's gonna break down, you know. And if you don't put fuel in the Ferrari, it's not gonna go. You know, so starting with the basics. I mean, people get so concerned about this stuff that you can do out of the water, like cryotherapy and ice baths and all that stuff. What I am doing right now, and I might focus on that stuff later as I need it, but I find that right now, what is more than sufficient is my eating habits and my hydrating, in order to, because I mean the body will do it itself, if you give it the right tools to do so, regardless of what you're doing. So if you eat as much as you need to be eating, and if you hydrate as much as you need to be, and if you're taking your vitamins are really good too, because if you don't get all of it in your diet that you're having every day, having that little bit of supplementation to get you there is also really important. It keeps you from getting sick, keeps you from those setbacks that you might find as a product of being malnutrition as an athlete, or not hydrating enough as an athlete. That's kind of stuff, the basics, if not done correctly, can really break you down and set you back 10 steps from where you were before. And I think it's only then, when you've eaten enough and you've drank enough water and you've taken care of yourself, that you can start worrying about those things after the fact, like I said, ice baths and rolling out and stretching, because all of that is supplementary. Like you need to make sure that your body's intact first before you do that kind of stuff. So for me, I eat a lot and I drink a lot of water. And sleep I'm okay about. I'd say about average, you know. I mean, I probably average about 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, and I'd say for like Division I, about maybe average, something like that. I'm not exactly sure where the number lies, but I'd say what I really excel at is, in terms of recovery, is just doing the basics. So eating and hydrating is what I'd say is the two most important for me.
Okay, so my last question was, so you had an injury that put you out of the pool for like 4 weeks, but then you still managed to get back, and I've seen you like for the past the 3 competitions, dual meets, like you've been going strong and strong every time. So like enlighten us a little bit, what did you do, like how did that feel, and was it like, okay, I'm gonna run and then go back to the pool and then boom, because you're just building off, and I think that's I mean, to see, that's amazing, and I'm very curious, and I think it can be inspirational to a lot of people, because I know a lot of people get like a broken like anything or an injury, and they're like, oh, I can't swim, and they just lay around and do nothing for months. But you're like, I saw your injury, and then 4 weeks later, you're like, yeah, I'm taking it, I'm recovering, and then boom, you're like duel after duel after duel. Like if you can enlighten us with your mindset, or how do you work through that?
Sure.
That would be amazing.
So yeah, I mean, from the moment I broke my collarbone, I just like almost immediately I was like, all right, so what can I do to get back?
Okay.
Like that was like my first thought, is like, okay, I'm gonna be out for a while, clearly, you know, because my bone was poking out. But yeah, so it was immediately from the first second, it was just like, what can I do to get back in the water as smoothly as and as efficiently as possible, because I knew I had a limited time frame for like Pac-12s, because I mean it was December when I broke it, and so I only have like a 3.5 months turnaround. I think it's about 3, something like that. But I knew time would be limited, and like never once did I think about like giving up or anything. Or just like sitting there and like being like, oh, I'm injured, you know, like I can't do anything, this sucks, you know, because life happens, and stuff like that's gonna happen, man. And it's about how you react to those things, and the efforts that you can make in spite of these horrible things that might happen to you. So I was just like, all right, I'm not going to be in the water for a while, probably, because I can't lift my arm at all, you know. So I was like, I'm going to be in the gym then. I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to maintain my cardiovascular health, and wellness and just do cardio there and do whatever lifting I can do. So I just pretty much, I think it was the day after I started going to the gym, because I didn't get much sleep that night and resolved that I was going to go to the gym tomorrow.
Okay.
So I like had this regimen where I do, depending on the day, it'd be like Stairmaster, you know, the machine with the revolving stairs.
Okay, yeah.
I did that one. That was probably my favorite one. And I do the bike, and I'd also do the treadmill. I couldn't quite run in the beginning just because the jolting hurt like way too much for me to take. But yeah, and then they also had this machine at the gym. It was like you move it with your arms, and I would just do it with my left. And then eventually I got to a place later in the injury where I was doing it with my right. You know? But yeah, I mean, there was a point there when I was doing like really, really intense stuff in the gym to simulate what I was getting in the water. And I mean, it's really, really hard to do high heart rate stuff like that if it's not like bursts of intensity, and at least for myself, because it's just it's a two-limbed movement. Like all the stuff I was doing was just my legs, and you know, you get in the water and using your whole body, and it's a lot easier to increase your heart rate, and you're holding your breath and all that. And I wasn't holding my breath when I was doing cardio. I was breathing a lot. But yeah, I was doing a lot of Stairmaster, and I got to a place where I was doing like almost an hour on the Stairmaster, and then I'd go do a 30-minute run, and then I'd go do some time on the bike and some time on the little arm cardio machine. And then I'd go do my lift after. And after the surgery, which was later December, I essentially had to start over. But the recovery from then on was much quicker than it was going to be with just the bone displaced and it healing that way. So from then on, I started doing like shoulder stability work. I do like super tiny weight, 3 to 5 pounds in my hand, and I do isometric holds, and I go up and down, and this way, up and down. Yeah, I mean, just like to summarize, like through this whole injury thing, if there's like anything I learned, it's that like, I mean, something might seem like a really tall task when it happens. Like if something bad happens to you, if you get injured or anything like that, if you get sick, that it might be a huge obstacle that you won't be able to overcome. But I think if you have like the right mindset and the right mentality, that anything is possible. I mean, and that if you're just willing to dedicate what it takes to get the job done that you want to do, that it can be done. And it's just about how much you're willing to give to get there. And I mean, for me, the job hasn't ended yet. I'm still healing and stuff, and I know there's more work I got to do. But I think this could apply to like anyone's situation, really, in that anything is possible, and that you just got to put your mind to it, and your body will follow.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.